Hello, how's everyone doing? This is Sam Bolton coming at you for a live stream. Wanted to do this video responding to a comment I got on my first live stream from a viewer. It says, Sam, I resonate with your comments. Oh, wait, let me introduce the hook here. Sorry. What if everything you see, the trees outside your window, the ground beneath your feet, isn't real? What if it's all a simulation? And then I can edit some Matrix characters flowing down the screen here. I turned 40 this year. I saw the original Matrix movie in the theater, right? So that was quite an experience, and I think a lot of people like me had the thought that maybe this is actually true. That maybe, what if this was reality was a simulation like the Matrix? How would we know? Sent us on down the path of exploration of reality, exploring different conspiracy theories and going down the rabbit holes and things. And I think a lot of people my age had that experience after watching The Matrix. But then come to find out, there's actually some pretty serious thinkers and philosophers who are into that idea and think that there's some strong, logic and rationality behind it. I don't know about evidence; it'd be hard to find empirical evidence for that, but it's an interesting thought experiment, it's an interesting thing to consider. So, the comment I got in my first video, quote, Sam, I resonate with your sentiments and look forward to your future videos. Thank you. It seems the idea that our 4D space time existence is energized by a ground of being from the so called Platonic realm. My intuition is our 4D existence is not a mental construct or a construct of our collective conscious, but an emanation of the so called Platonic realm. In other words, the Platonic realm is existential and exists outside of our minds. We clearly comprise 4D stuff, and therefore, under my axiom, we emanate from the Platonic realm and don't create 4D space or the Platonic realm within our minds. I don't see any good evidence that we are set apart from the other 4D stuff other than we have our own unique way of observing the universe and being self aware. I very much welcome any constructive criticism with evidence and logic. Thanks. And of course, spelling thanks THX, saving four letters. Very, very internet of you. So, I wanted to make this video to talk about my ideas on this idea, explore the simulation theory and the logic behind it, connect it to multiverse theory, talk about how it connects to ancient philosophies like Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, Christian Gnosticism, and quantum physics. And I want to present a hybrid theory that I have, okay? So let's see here. I wanted to check and see real quick and see if I'm live and what the audio is like. Well, there's probably a better way to do this, but we are. Let's see here. Okay, am I live? I'm live. Let's see how we're doing here. Okay, sounds like we have audio. Oh yeah, we're doing good. All right, cool. So, the logic of the simulation theory, okay? So the simulation theory is kind of a modern philosophical idea. It was put forward by Nick Bostrom, I think about 20 years ago. Pretty respected philosopher. Here's a quote from Nick. If advanced civilizations can create simulations of conscious beings, then it's statistically more likely that we're living in one of those simulations than in base reality. Okay? So this is from his essay, Are You Living in a Computer Simulation? The three possibilities the idea is this, that any civilization like ours that's advancing technologically will eventually get to the point that they can create simulations convincing enough that if you were to be inside of one, you wouldn't know the difference between it and base reality. So it's logical that we're on the fast track to creating simulations, virtual environments like this. So there's three possibilities, okay? Advanced civilizations never reach the capability to simulate conscious beings, or so we never get to that point. That's like a choke point, right? Or perhaps these civilizations choose not to create simulations, and if they're anything like ours, like our civilization with our Promethean ethos, right, then that is highly unlikely, in my opinion. And the third, simulated beings vastly outnumber real beings, making it likely that we are simulated. Okay, so whether we are actually just simulated beings inside of a computer construct, or maybe we are conscious beings in base reality, and we're inside of the simulation playing some kind of video game. If you had, think about how many copies of Skyrim were sold. I'm not sure how many there were, but there's got to be millions of copies out there that people played. And in every single one of those copies, you had the game creating NPCs for the player to interact with. So the number of NPCs in those games vastly outnumber the number of players playing that game at any given point, because there, there's probably dozens of NPCs operating, if not more, in each game that each individual player played. Make sense? Okay, so there's mostly it's more likely that there's more simulated beings and simulated environments than and vastly outnumber real beings. Okay, and so there's the logic behind Nick Bostrom's argument. And just think about the evolution of video games too. Starting off with Pong, very exciting, thrilling game that simulated table tennis. You probably heard of this. And then now we're getting to the point where video games are extremely realistic. You've got the Unreal Engine. Uh, just they're using, and now we're getting to the point where we can use AI to just automatically create these environments without necessarily having to go in and animate them and construct them using computer programmers. And I know I've gotten some comments on my video that AI is sort of a dud, and that a lot of the promises that the AI hype people made are not going to come true. I understand that. There's a whole cottage industry on YouTube of people who are trying to hype things up and make AI, AGI, and things like that seem like it's just around the corner, and we're going to live forever, and we're going to create these incredible medical technologies, and it's going to happen any day now. And they're doing that obviously to get views, one, and I'm sure some of them believe it too. But uh, I think if you zoom out a little bit and you can kind of see that AI is in its beginning stages, it's in its infancy, and go back and look at like AI image creation from just 3 years ago and how ridiculously, cringe it was. It was really, gross and weird. And now it's getting to the point where it's hyper realistic. That's a very short amount of time. Same with AI video. Now it's getting to the point where it's getting more and more realistic. Give it a few more years, it's going to be incredible. And they're also creating 3D. In fact, that's, I believe, how AI videos are generated. The AI programs create 3D virtual worlds and then generate the videos within those worlds, and that's how they at least some of the models make their AI text to image, text to video videos. So things are moving rapidly, and I think AI is going to surprise a lot of us what it's going to do in the next 10 years. I'm no expert, but that's my layman's opinion based on observation. So the evolution of video games has been incredible. Give it 20 more years. I think we're going to have simulations that are indistinguishable from base reality in a lot of ways. Maybe not entirely, but pretty close. Okay. So here's a quote from Jean Baudrillard, Simulacra and Simulation. He says, quote, "Today, abstraction is no longer that of the map, the double, the mirror, or the concept. It is the generation by models of a real without origin or reality, a hyperreal." Okay? So, it's another quote from a French guy to make you think about simulacra, which is it's a fancy word for a simulation. Here's another quote from a David Kipping, Bayesian analyst, who looked at Nick Bostrom's ideas. He says, "The odds are nearly 50-50 that we're living in a simulation versus base reality." Okay, these are serious thinkers who think there's a lot to simulation theory. Okay, and creating conscious simulations that we're about to create would drastically shift these odds dramatically toward us being simulated beings, or at least beings in a simulated reality. Okay. So there you got simulation theory. I know Elon Musk is big on it too. I've heard Neil deGrasse Tyson talk about it. So it's kind of a pop theory, but there's a lot to it. It's not just something to brush off as fantasy. It's not as fringe as we'd like to think. And whenever I talk to people about this and never heard about it before, they express a level of fear, which I guess I understand. But I think it's kind of exciting, to find out that we're not in base reality, because then you got to ask yourself the question: what is base reality? Why did they create the simulation? Is base reality drastically different from this one? Are the physics different? Are the laws of nature different there? A lot of fascinating questions. Okay, so let's connect simulation theory to multiverse theory, which is another popular theory among scientists to explain some of the hard to explain features of quantum physics. Okay, so we all know multiverse theory. We've seen everything everywhere all at once. We've seen the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the DC Universe. This has been highly popularized, so I think you have an idea in your head of what it means and rough idea of how it works. Quote, "Modern thinking is that time did not start with the Big Bang. Universes are formed when bubbles collide or fission into smaller bubbles. So we have these different universes popping out of one another when they collide with one another. So think about flipping a coin. In one universe, the coin lands on heads. In another universe, the coin lands on tails. In another universe, the coin lands exactly on its edge and doesn't fall either way. In another universe, it pops up in the air and turns into a whale. And I don't know, like Douglas Adams or something, Hitchhiker's Guide. So in an infinite universe, there's no such thing as fiction, right? So the idea being in a universe or multiverse where anything is possible, anything you can imagine exists out there, right? That's sort of the idea behind the multiverse. So there's just briefly Max Tegmark's levels of multiverses. You got level 1, universes beyond our observable horizon. Level 2, universes with different physical constants. Level 3, you got the many worlds interpretation, kind of like that Loki show on Disney Plus, quantum branching. And level 4, Deadpool 3 as well, Deadpool and Wolverine. And level 4, universes governed by entirely different mathematical structures. So these would be universes that would be entirely alien to us because the mathematical structure would be different, right? So you could probably think of the way it was shown in Everything Everywhere All at Once as well, where the universes that we had easier access to in that movie were more similar to ours, and then the universes that were more distant were more strange and weird to us. So that would be kind of a way to think about it. Okay, so multiverse theory, two wild ideas, and I like to think about them, and actually have an opinion about how simulation theory and multiverse theory could work together, right? So if multiverse theory is true and we're also in a simulation, critics would say it would take a huge amount of computing power to simulate an entire universe all at one time, all the physical matter and all the beings and all the thoughts and all the actions and all the physical, the physics interactions and the chemical interactions and the passage of time. To simulate all this in a computerized environment would take so much power and so much processing power that it's basically impossible. You'd have to harness the energy of thousands, billions maybe of stars to do it. But there is a solution to that criticism. So I want to talk about that in a moment. There is also support for these ideas, these modern quote unquote philosophies, and some of the more ancient lines of thought. In Hinduism, you've got Maya, the concept of Maya, which is describing our world as an illusion, a veil over the ultimate reality. Okay, so this is obviously similar to the idea of this being a simulated reality and the base reality being something that's hidden from us, right? And then you've got Brahman, which you could think of as the code underlying all of existence. I've also heard the multiverse discussed in Hinduism as Indra's net. You have these jewels in this net, and each jewel is a different reality. In Buddhism, you've got a quote from the Buddha: "What we are today comes from our thoughts of yesterday, and our present thoughts build our life of tomorrow." And this goes to my hybrid theory that's coming soon, but the way that we perceive reality is extremely impactful on how the universe presents itself to us. We've got the concept of sunyata, emptiness, which is in Buddhism, it connects to quantum mechanics, which is the observer effect, where phenomena within our reality arises conditionally. And I haven't talked about that yet, but it will. And you could also look at Buddhist cosmology, resembles the multiverse theories, parallel universes as well. Okay, so in Eastern thought, this is, ancient, and I would say a lot of folks in Southeast Asia who are familiar with their philosophical and religious traditions are probably not gobsmacked by ideas like multiverse and simulation theory, right? They probably make sense to them. In Taoism, you got a quote from Lao Tzu: "Life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. Don't resist them. Let reality be reality. Reality is constantly changing spontaneously. It's not this static thing. Tao is the ineffable source behind all existence." It's akin to the code underneath. And then, of course, you've got the yin and the yang dynamics, which mirror quantum superposition, perhaps, duality within unity. Okay, so in quantum physics, we have this thing called the observer effect. If you're familiar with these ideas, you're probably aware of it. But basically, and you can go look it up and to get the nitty gritty details. But the the particles, they did an experiment, and there was particles that would they would change their nature. They would change into a wave, but back into a particle based on whether or not somebody was observing them. I'm sure I butchered the explanation of that horribly, but the idea being that a conscious observation of these particles was affecting their state and affecting whether or not they were essentially rendered into existence, right? And this was a spooky action at a distance. That's the quote that people describe this as. It's very spooky. It seems like the distances within space were extremely surmountable and almost right next to each other within the quantum physics framework, and that freaked people out. Right? So, this is, again, go look it up for yourself. I'm just running through this because I want to get to my idea in response to this comment, my hybrid theory here, okay? In quantum entanglement is the phenomenon that they described from the observer effect. Quote, reality cannot be found except in one single source because of the interconnection of all things with one another. That's a quote from Leibniz, okay? And this is similar to the Buddhist idea of interdependence and Taoist unity within duality, okay? So you're getting a lot of the ancient philosophies about reality confirmed within quantum physics. At least that's what it seems like to me. Feel free to criticize me in the comments. I won't be upset, okay? So, and then I also want to point to Christian Gnosticism too. I don't have it here in my notes, but thinking about simulation theory, that's what Christian Gnostics, and even you could say Orthodox Christianity, is saying as well. This reality that we're living in is a created construct by God, or in the Gnostic viewpoint, by Yahweh, the demiurge, the evil, mad child god, the bastard and blind son of Sophia. They created this world, and it is a construct. It is a poor imitation, or maybe not so poor imitation, of the actual base reality. So again, connecting this back to religious and philosophical traditions that go back 2,000 plus years, even in Western civilization, right? And then you can also look at the Western esoteric tradition. There's what's that famous book that came out like 100 plus years ago that goes through the seven Hermetic principles. I can't think of the name of it right now, but read through that. This is supposed to be a synthesis of ancient esoteric knowledge passed down through the Western Hermetic tradition, through like the Freemasons and things. And again, they're describing a universe that seems to be highly simulated, a construct that our minds and our observation have a direct impact upon, right? So here's my hybrid theory about how you can bridge the simulation theory and the multiverse theory together, okay? And this is some great, like, sitting around with your friends in a garage and having some stoner conversations. This is good stuff. Even though I'm sober now, I used to get stoned quite a bit, so I've had those thoughts. So, in video games, modern video games, say you have a game like Grand Theft Auto with this massive, detailed map. Okay, when you go into the game and play the game, the map is not the 3D environment that the programmers made is not entirely rendered all at one time. The only part of the map that's rendered is the part that your character in the game is interacting with. Okay, the part that you're looking at, that's the part that's rendered. The part that you're inside of, that's the part that's rendered. The rest of the map, the rest of the 3D environment exists as a potential within the code of the game. Okay, so this is how you can have multiverse theory and simulation theory work without having the problem of this massive amount of computing power. Okay, so infinite multiverses exist, infinite realities potentially exist as potential within the code of the universe, and it requires a conscious observer like you and I to look and to observe the reality. And when we do that, that's when it renders in front of us. Okay, so when the idea that this microphone right here, it only exists in 3D physical space, 4D space, when I am interacting with it, looking at it, and the rest of the time, it is simply a potential microphone existing within code or something like that, the underlying code of the universe. Okay, and that might be a wild theory, but again, I go back to Buddhism, the famous cone when a tree falls in the forest and there's nobody around to hear it, does it make sound? You know, is the sound actually physical in this reality if there's no conscious observer to take it in? That's a fair question, and that would be how the multiverse theory could work and how the simulation theory could work together at the same time. Okay, so these different infinite number of universes that exist out there, they don't all exist simultaneously all at the same time. The only aspects of them exist, and the only universes exist when they're being observed by conscious observers like you and me. Or if you want to look at it in a monotheistic Christian framework, I mean, they'll tell you in Christianity that our existence is entirely dependent upon God's mind, God's will. Okay, so His observation, His mind, is the foundation for our existence. And if He were to stop thinking about us, this would all go away. Okay, so He is the conscious observer of our simulation in that way of thinking. So that's my idea behind it. I don't think that reality is entirely the emanation of our minds. I'm not a strict idealist in that sense. I do think that reality is independent of individuals, but I don't think it exists in full physical three-dimensional rendering at all times, right? Within this theory, and I'm not dogmatic about this. This is just me spitballing. I mean, what the hell do I know? I'm just a guy, but I'm just, I've read a lot and I've thought a lot about this, and this is my idea that I'm running with right now. So yes, in response to the original comment, perhaps reality is independent of our minds and exists in a quote unquote Platonic realm, like you said, and that would be the code, right? And then when the conscious observer comes around, then it emanates from that Platonic realm and renders before us as a microphone, as a tree, as a chair, as the wind, whatever it may be. Okay, so again, just recapping. Reality exists as potential code, rendered only when observed by conscious beings. Infinite universes exist as latent possibilities within this code. Consciousness selects which potentials become actualized. Okay? Just like a modern video game, environments are stored as data, but rendered only when players enter them. Could our universe, our multiverse, work similarly? Perhaps. Perhaps. Okay, so just connecting it back, you've got in Hinduism, you've got the Atman as eternal consciousness, linked to Brahman. You've got in Buddhism, you've got consciousness shapes karma moment by moment. In Taoism, you've got consciousness which harmonizes with Tao rather than opposing it. In Christianity, both Gnostic and otherwise, you've got the consciousness of God being the ground of all reality, and reality being dependent upon God's consciousness, right? In quantum consciousness theory, you've got Penrose Hameroff's OR model, which suggests consciousness arises from quantum processes within brain microtubules. Okay, that's something I need to study some more, but that's another interesting idea that consciousness is actually is starting in our brain and is not fundamental. I need to look into that some more. So, what are the implications of these ideas? Are we passive players in somebody else's simulation, or are we active co-creators shaping reality through observation? Maybe it's not exactly the same for every human on the planet. Maybe some people are active co-creators, and maybe some people are passive players. Going back to the NPC meme, I don't like that meme. I don't like it for the potential to alienate and cause hatred and division among human populations, but it is something to think about. Some people do seem very, very passive, not actively trying to understand reality. They're just sort of consuming, slop and going to work and not really thinking a whole lot. Maybe those are NPCs. That's not to say they couldn't be awakened and start to awaken to the greater reality around them and the great philosophical questions and mysteries. Maybe they could become awake, active players and co-creators. So the potential is there, or maybe some of them are just NPCs and designed to be that way, like human-looking robots, right? So I don't know. Interesting questions. I will say in Valentinian Gnosticism, they did have three tiers of beings, of humans in the reality we're in, and one of them was called the Hylic, and that's an idea that goes back 2,000 years almost, and it's essentially the same as the NPC idea. I think I discussed that when this channel was the Enigma Desk in one of my videos about the NPCs. So anyway, so why do we create these simulations? Think about us, like we're creating these simulations. Why do we do it? We create video games to entertain ourselves, to have fun, to to give us something to do when we're bored, to have a sense of competition. Essentially, we're just doing it because we like to do it, right? Why did God create the universe? Because he wanted to. He got lonely. He wanted some friends. He wanted some beings to hang out with and to have a relationship with. That's what they'll tell you, right? So, if we are creating these highly advanced simulations to go into and to have different experiences, why are we doing it? Maybe the meaning of this reality, the meaning of the universe, maybe all the drama we experience in this world exists just because we, the players in this game, want to have some fun. Maybe that's why we're here. We're just here to enjoy life and have a good time, experience the drama of life, the ups and the downs, the heartaches, the romances, the hatreds, the rivalries, all these things that we experience in life. Maybe we love it. Maybe we like that drama. In fact, I know we do. What kind of shows, when you go watch a movie or a show on Netflix or Disney Plus or whatever, do you want to watch some boring story where nothing happens? Or do you want to watch a movie where there's great highs and lows and people are falling in love and people are getting killed and there's sex scenes and there's action and there's just people, friends betraying each other and people are getting cancer? And that's the kind of show you want to watch. And what, I mean, if you're if this is a game and you went into this game, you probably came in here because you wanted to experience things like that in a 3D, three-dimensional reality. And maybe you got more than you bargained for. Maybe it's too intense for you. But I don't know, something to think about. So, anyway, I think that's probably enough. Let's wrap it up. Uh, oh, I got an alarm going off here. Hang on. Just turn it off there. Okay. So, closing thought: the simulacrum is never what hides the truth. It is truth that hides the fact that there is none. Jean Baudrillard. Fancy French guy again. Something to think about. Is reality, if reality is rendered by observation, what does that say about our role in shaping reality? Share your thoughts in the comments. I would appreciate hearing what you think, and thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Like and subscribe. Follow me. All that stuff. I'm on Twitter and